Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Today we've got a special show. We're going to be interviewing Maggie Oliver. Now, Maggie Oliver was part of Greater Manchester Police, and she was knocking on all the superiors' doors regarding Operation Augusta, where young, vulnerable children were being targeted and exploited all around the area. She is exclusively on KTV today. We will be speaking to her and showing you how her experience and how her journey went. Okay, now we've got Maggie on the line. Maggie Oliver, welcome to the show.
Hello, Deepa. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. We appreciate you taking out time in your busy schedule to come and just highlight to our viewers some of the experience you went through. So, this is in the early 2000s, Operation Augusta, when it first came to light. And, I just want you to let the viewers know what happened and how your experience was from there to now, because in recent headlines, there's been, massive news clips, and everyone's talking about Operation Augusta and how it was a failure and people were covering it up. I just want you to let all the viewers know from start to scratch as much as you can, please.
Oof, how to start? Well, first of all, if anybody wants to read the full story, they could get my book, Survivors, that goes into great detail. But I'll try to explain simply as possible what happened.
Yeah.
I was a serving police officer based in Manchester, outside. I was asked on a job which became Operation Augusta. There'd been a documentary had been following the social service team in South Yorkshire, and they'd uncovered the problem of young girls being groomed and sexually abused by gangs of men, predominantly in origin in Keighley. In the GMP area in Greater Manchester, we, at the same time, more or less, there was a young girl called Victoria Ago, and she was being groomed and horrifically sexually by gangs of men. And sadly, she was given a drug overdose and died. So GMP approached me, together with two other officers and a inspector, and they put together a small team to look at whether we had a similar problem to that existed in South Yorkshire. We very quickly found that we absolutely did. And within the space of a few months, we had a list of 97 offenders on a database, and in excess of 2 dozen children. That was the tip of the iceberg.
That's quite deep if you think about it. That's a lot. That's a massive number.
It was, and the problem was that social workers had been trying for a long time to highlight this problem to the police, and the police not doing anything about it. And, I'm often asked why that was. But at the time, Child Protection Unit only dealt that was by somebody who had what they called care, custody or control of their victim. Somebody like a father or a scout leader or a teacher.
Yeah.
But what was happening in these cases was the abuse was by strangers. So it should have got the remit of the CID department, but because it was child, they weren't equipped to deal with it. That's one of the reasons why it wasn't being assessed. We quickly uncovered this problem. Months later, when we gathered the evidence, myself and a colleague took a report to the highest level of DFP, so to the head of crime, and we made the resource investigation with a full team from the Major Incident Team.
Okay.
That was resourced. We went into a full investigation mode and was being put onto the database. There was no debate about whether this was a problem or not. We knew that dozens of children were being groomed and sexually by gangs of sophisticated abusers.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, in my own life, I was terminally ill, and went off work his last couple of months to look after him. And when I went back a couple of months later, the whole job had just died a death. It had been buried as though it had never been there in the first place. And I was completely horrified and
I bet you were.
that had happened, and I couldn't make any sense of it. So, you know, but I didn't have any documentary evidence.
Yeah.
I couldn't prove what I was saying. It made no sense. We had the evidence, and why were they not doing anything about it? But wherever I went, I was just told, no, there's insufficient evidence, no, we couldn't do anything. But it never left me the knowledge that these men were being left to continue to sexually abuse and rape generations of other children.
Of course. Maggie,
go on.
Just as you were speaking about that, it reminds me of some of the work as a community, like we're part of the Sikh community, and we face similar problems where there's been targeting of Sikh females by gangs or perpetrators from other communities who target them. And you know, we've recently done a report as well, like last year, which showed and highlighted 5 decades of this. And you know, just learning from some of your experiences, you know, I can relate to some of the stuff that you've been through as well at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the report that came out a few weeks ago was just really finally a public acknowledgement that over all these years, and I was involved in Operation Span in 2010, there were similar failures, and you know, I was, you know, forced to resign to speak publicly. But for me, you know, this was never a racial issue for me. For me, this is purely an issue about the law and about child abuse.
System. Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, the law is there to prosecute paedophiles wherever they come from.
Yeah, of course,
so
definitely.
I couldn't understand why nothing was being done about it. And I still don't, because the decision to close down Operation Augusta was an intentional, a deliberate decision to shut down a job. And the review, the independent review, makes it absolutely crystal clear that decision was made knowing that there were dozens of children being sexually abused, and that for me is unforgivable. The men, there were men, they were senior officers at the top of GMP, the chief constable, the assistant chief constables, the head of serious crime, the head of the Force Child Protection Unit. They knew what was going on because everything was in the report that they were delivered. So to close that job down, withdraw all the resources, and then for 15 years pretend that these men were not paedophiles, for me is unforgivable, and they should be held to account legally. They should be facing a court of law for gross criminal neglect, for misfeasance in a public office, because those men went on to abuse generations of other children.
They were left to do that on the streets. They were allowed to continue to do that for another 15 years.
I beg your pardon, it's a really poor line.
I said they let these perpetrators stay at large on the streets to continue to do the crimes that they're committing.
Absolutely, they just turned a blind eye. And, you know, God, I can't tell you how many sleepless nights I've had. This made me ill. And, you know, leaving my job, I ended up losing my home, I lost my career, I lost my income. I was really not well at all. I couldn't make any sense of why this was happening. But, you know, the report says that, in large part, it was down to resourcing. And I know that to be the truth. Part of it is resourcing. I firmly believe that part of it is a judgment of these children as being bad kids, that they don't matter, a kind of an underclass, and they're not worth protecting. That's something that I could never condone. You know, as a police officer, when you join the police, you swear an oath of attestation in which you promise to uphold the law, to act with integrity, to act with impartiality, to protect the most vulnerable and to, uphold fundamental human rights. And every one of those principles is exactly what was not being done
Definitely,
in
totally
the case of
agree with
these
you.
cases.
Totally agree with you on that. Definitely, it was a massive failure, which has come to light finally. And how has that made you feel now? Like this report's come out and it's hit the headlines, and how has that made you feel? Is it a bit of relief or truth that's come out for you?
You know what, Deepa? I've got mixed feelings actually.
Right.
I definitely feel relieved that, after years of being written off as a woman who had become the Chief Constable, Peter Fahy, said I was a woman who had become too emotionally involved, that I'd been bereaved, like misogynistic comments that, not every victim can have their day in court. Things that they said to undermine my credibility, to try and convince people that I was making it up. So the fact
So you
that
were
now
vilified within the force then?
Pardon?
So you were like literally vilified within the force?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was isolated. I was threatened. I thought I might go to prison for speaking the truth. And I had to face up to the worst of my fears. And that's what made me ill, not knowing what to do. When I decided I was going to speak out, I went through pretty much every rank in GMP. I went to the head of child protection. I went to the head of the public protection unit. I went to the head of serious crime. I went to the chief constable, the IOPC, the children's commissioner, the home office, and everywhere I turned, the door was slammed in my face. The chief constable has never had a single conversation with me to this day, but he continues to say that he's spoken to me on numerous occasions. Well, he hasn't. They've lied through the teeth. They've tried to discredit me. So this public acknowledgement that everything I said was the truth is a massive vindication for me of the stand I've taken. But it's also wrapped up with real horror and sadness about, how many other children have been abused by these same men over 15 years whilst they've been left to roam the streets. What are the cost of those lies? I can never put the clock back. I can't be the person that I was. It's caused me, 10 years of fighting to be heard since I left my job nearly. Yeah. I can't get those years back, but I do feel that the truth is now out there. I worked on the drama Three Girls for 4 years, so this hasn't just been one conversation. Yeah. Even this afternoon, I have been speaking now for 4 hours to different people. It's kind of, in a way, become the only thing I talk about, but it's led me to set up my own charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, because I want to ensure that there isn't as much isolation around this, that we have a joined up system, that, the children who, they're all young women now, that young women who have been failed hopefully can feel they've got somewhere to come where they will be supported and believed. And I want to put together a system, that works, but also to continue to expose the failures and, shout out for those responsible for this gross neglect of duty to be held accountable, to have the full weight of the law thrown against them, to be charged with misfeasance in a public office. And at that point, I kind of feel that the journey will have achieved what is needed.
Yeah,
really.
No, definitely. You're going to have some visions. You can see where people failed. You want to make improvements in policies and change. I can see we know online, I can see everything you're doing. You're doing fantastic work. And even like now, you just highlighted that you were part of the Three Girls documentary. Like, that was amazing. That hit hearts and minds. It actually put how bad the narrative was out there, like, into reality, in like visually. It showed how bad it was for some of the girls.
Yeah, I think it was a very powerful drama, and I think it very clearly showed and explained what grooming is.
Definitely.
I don't feel it went far enough in exposing the true failures of the police, the CPS. I don't feel that it was fully explored. I think the documentary, though, that went alongside it, The Betrayed Girls,
Yes.
by Henry Singer, that's now on BBC iPlayer, I think, for the next month. It's been reshown. It was shown a couple of weeks ago. That gives a clearer picture of the scope of the failures, that it's not just one job, one investigation. This spans perhaps 20 years.
Definitely.
And I truly believe that the only reason things are changing is because they are unable, the police, the CPS, the criminal justice system is unable to pretend anymore that it isn't happening, because now the country knows it is and have to address it. So I still believe we have a long way to go, Deepa. I don't think things are by any means solved as yet. Part 2 of the independent review is still to be undertaken. There's many things still to come out, and I think Oldham has now been added into that review as well. But we are going in the right direction, and I believe that Gary and Malcolm, who did the review, I'll be forever grateful to those two people for uncovering what I knew to be the case, for really digging deep, and for doing what they were asked to do with absolute honesty and integrity. And in my experience over the past 10 years, that is extremely rare. So I will be forever grateful to them. I didn't expect that when I began speaking to them, being interviewed 2 years ago, because Andy Burnham asked for this independent review because he heard me in a radio interview talking about the failures of Greater Manchester Police. I believe, or I suspect, that initially he thought I was telling lies, as you know, that's what had been said by the police. But once they started to investigate and look into it, it became very clear to them that I was actually telling the truth. And so I've got lots of mixed feelings, really, Deepa.
Yeah,
sadness.
I can tell, I can see.
Yeah.
And a lot of blood, sweat and tears has gone into this, I can see.
Yeah, it's taken over my life, but ultimately, and when I left my job, I did not know I would be able to drive it this far. But I knew full well that I wanted one thing that proved that I had tried. I didn't want my own children to be, turning the TV on in 30 years, like the Hillsborough case.
Of course.
And somebody says on the TV, there was this shocking scandal in relation to children groomed and sexually abused, and nobody spoke out about it. I wanted my kids to know that I had tried, but I never expected it to grow to take over my whole life, and I need a little bit of my own life back again. But until the foundation is established and there are other people who can pick up the ropes, that I'm not going to walk away from this, but I need other people now to come on board and help to change things so that
one person can't do this
so that we
alone.
continue to improve,
Definitely, and whatever you need from us, from organisations or media-wise, we'll always support you as much as we can. That's great, because I do, it's often said that this is about, racial issues, but for me it isn't. I am not in any way, shape or form racist. There are good and bad people in every community. Definitely.
What the people who have let down the children are actually the authorities. There are abusers everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you are.
And they need to be held accountable, most 100% definitely. They have to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And we're fully with you on that.
The message that goes out has to be that if you abuse a child, you will be prosecuted. And it doesn't matter where you come from or what your background is or what your ethnicity is or what your religion is, what colour you are. It doesn't matter. The fact is that you are a child abuser. and the police and the courts must deal with them properly, and they must charge those men with rape. Where, on the Rochdale case, most of those men were just charged with trafficking. They are guilty of dozens of rapes. They should be in prison for the rest of their lives, as far as I'm considered, but most definitely not out walking the streets again less than 3 years later. That, for me, is a travesty, and it is not what the criminal justice system is meant to do. So there's a long way to go.
There is. There's a lot to do, but collectively we can only help each other and do what we can, definitely.
And I want the Maggie Oliver Foundation to be a really positive. I want the survivors, the young women, eventually I'd like to extend it to young men as well, but the young women who have survived this, I want them to know that they can transform their lives, that it is possible with the right support, the right help, to build a great future. And the foundation will give them that support. They won't be on their own. We are facilitating training and therapy and psychotherapy, the things actually that should be there from the establishment already. But sadly it isn't, and it's very costly. Isolation, and what I've done for the girls that I've supported is really just hold their hands through the process, and go with them to see a lawyer, or go with them to see a psychotherapist, or point them in the right direction and make them feel that they're not on their own. That's what I want the foundation to be. But also, just to be on a Monday when we do the drop-in, I want it to be a happy place where they come and we do maybe a lunch club, or maybe a makeup session, or maybe some yoga, or just to be surrounded by people who understand. Because sometimes that's all that's needed.
Yeah,
somebody
definitely.
to listen, and somebody to say you've done nothing wrong, and to hold your hand if you want to go and seek some compensation. So
assist them as best
I'm
you
doing
can.
my best.
No, you're doing fantastic. One thing I wanted to touch on, Victoria Ogolia.
Yeah.
It was so tragic what happened to her within this operation, did you ever get to speak to her family or anyone who was close to her or anything, or did you get to speak to her before she passed away, sadly?
No, because to be honest, Deepa, when Operation Augusta was put together, Victoria had just recently died.
Okay.
And I believe that was one of the reasons the operation was put together. But so Operation Augusta was centred around Manchester, so we never went to Rochdale where she died. That was not part of the investigation. That was pre-Operation Augusta. But her death is part of what prompted Operation Augusta to be started. But when I began to speak out publicly, I'd never met her family. I didn't know very much about her, but I actually found and went to speak with Joan, with her grandma.
Okay.
And we, I like to feel that I've helped her along this journey and shared my knowledge of what happened, so that the independent review then spoke to Joan and uncovered a lot of the failures surrounding her death as well. So there are multiple failures, obviously the worst of which led to Victoria's death.
Yeah.
But the girls that then formed part of Operation Augusta have had their lives in many ways completely blighted. And Greater Manchester Police have now been forced to reopen Operation Augusta 15 years later as a result of this review.
Yeah.
They didn't do it willingly or voluntarily. The current Chief Constable, Ian Hopkins, says that they have voluntarily referred themselves to the IOPC. Well, excuse you, no you didn't. You were forced, kicking and screaming, to do that by the independent review that proved that you'd failed in your duty to investigate these serial paedophiles. That wasn't a voluntary referral. You were forced to. So, actually don't get me going.
No, it's fine. It happens, and these failures do upset you. And you can see, like, I've been in the same situation where we've tried to highlight some of these issues, and we get, you know, you get people shutting the door on you. They don't understand, and you're trying to. And look, it took you 15 years to get some sort of little bit of truth, and this is just a stepping stone in the right direction.
It is, and I'm trying to build on my knowledge and my experience.
Definitely.
Because my voice, you know, I've become an expert on this. I know every little piece of this. It lives in my head every day. You know, every day of every week. It's never gone away.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to use my knowledge to force through the changes that we need. But it still angers me when I hear, you know, the press office and the organisation trying to protect the organisation rather than face up to the failures. You know, I think that people become so angry and so disillusioned because they actually know the truth of the matter, and we get infuriated and by the constant will to conceal the truth.
Yes.
And the authorities, the police, the CPS, social services, are more interested in protecting the organisation than they are in finding the truth and
totally
putting
agree
it right.
with that. Fully
And that's
agree.
what makes me really angry.
Yeah, they do. And instead of saying, look, we've made a mistake here, let's just quickly try and address it, rather they'll try and justify it, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And really that's kind of what still troubles me. That's why I believe that legal accountability is the only way to ensure we don't keep on seeing another review and another review, because valuable as that is in exposing the real facts, the actual truth of the matter is that has got no legal, it isn't legally binding in any way. It is a review that says what has happened. It's not going to change anything for the future. And the money and the time and the effort that has gone into that, we can't do that about every case that's a failure. So, but I truly believe that if the chief constables throughout the country knew today that if they knowingly and intentionally close down a job like that, where there is plenty of evidence to take something to court, that they can be stripped of the pension, that they could go to prison, I believe that they would make very different decisions today.
Yeah, definitely. And we have to set a
without
precedent
that,
there.
I don't think it will. They will slide out the door. They'll get their pension, and they won't even take a backward look at the lives that they've destroyed in their passing.
Definitely, you have to make an example for someone to realise how bad it can be for them. Totally agree. The last thing before we end the show, Maggie, and the call, positive work. You've done a book. You've set up the foundation. What else is for the future?
Well, hopefully when this is all running properly and we've got the right people who are going to share the load, I can maybe have a bit of my own life back again and, sail off into the sunset maybe.
No worries. But you are doing fantastic work, honestly, and whatever you need from us, we'll always fully support you.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice to know. I appreciate the call, and if anybody wants to support us, the foundation is a registered charity now.
Yeah.
We have got a Just Giving page, but if they go on to either my website, maggieoliver.co.uk, or the foundation, or read my book, it will give an overview, and people can support us. We're looking for people to help, and professionals, and all kinds of things. So please contact us,
really good
or
work.
do your own fundraising events, maybe get involved.
No
so we can help,
we'll
the girls, the young women themselves to pick up the pieces and move forward.
Definitely. Thank you, Maggie, for your call. We really appreciate it, and I will be speaking to you very soon. Thank you, Maggie.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on your show. Bye-bye, Deepa. Bye-bye.
Bye. You've just heard Maggie Oliver on today's show. That was an update, what she went through, experience as a police officer, to running her own organisation now to help other survivors. Just see what she went through, where the failures are. She's an officer, ex-officer, telling you the failures within the system. This is what we need to do, is pinpoint what the issues are so we can address them and rectify them and help support those victims, those survivors and those families. Thank you for listening. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.